Welcome everyone to this side event of the 53rd UN Statistical Commission on mobilizing innovation through partnership and collaboration. The event today is jointly organized by the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data, the Sustainable Development Solution Network TReNDS, the Development Data Group of the World Bank, and our Statistics Division. These are the four core partners of the Data for Now initiative. I'm Francesca Perucci from the UN Statistics Division. Data for Now was launched already almost 2.5 years ago in September 2019 to address the concern that serious gaps still remained after several years into the implementation of the 2030 agenda, both in terms of coverage and timeliness. Millions of people remained missing around the world from the data we collect and we use, and therefore they are still excluded from decision making and from informing the policies that will eventually affect them. As we will hear shortly, the initiative is about really bringing and developing national capacity to use and mainstream the use of innovative data sources, methods, technologies for the production of timely and disaggregated data for the SDGs. And it's based on partnerships across the data system and also with other experts outside the data system from that bring technical solutions, including academia, business sector, civil society, and also engaging with other parts of the government. But what makes this initiative, I would say, quite unique is that it takes a user-centric approach, with each country working on what they establish as their priorities in terms of the data that they most urgently need to, that they are most urgently needed to meet the user's demand. So every country works and focuses on something different, but then eventually those solutions are shared and benefit a larger number of partners and countries. So the event today is an opportunity to review the work that's already been done, and we'll hear from very interesting experiences in countries. We'll also highlight some of the partnerships that made that possible and that have been formed during this work. But before I pass it over to Grant Cameron, who's one of the key partners in director of SDSN TReNDS, I just like to remind you the event is recorded. And you also have an opportunity then to ask questions later. There will be Q&A sessions. But let me now turn it over to Grant. Grant, over to you.
Thanks very much, Francesca, for that introduction, and welcome to everyone to this side event. I'm delighted to make some opening remarks, but I recognize I'm standing in the way of a number of great presentation and panelists. So I'm going to restrict my remarks to really just 3 thoughts. First, I think as Francesca said, I just want to remind us all that the overall objective of the Data for Now initiative, and then I just want to have 2 additional thoughts on why we at SDSN TReNDS, and I'm sure it's not just we at TReNDS, but all of us who are really engaged in this initiative are so excited to be a part of it. So you'll really hear 3 things from me. So first, the objective. I think Francesca encapsulated the objective very, very well. It's really focused on building capacity to deploy the best knowledge and tools for better data for all of us to achieve the SDGs. So I mean, I think it's a very clear and it's a really critical objective of this initiative. And then why are we excited to be a part of this? And there's really 2 words that come to my mind when I think about how the Data for Now initiative works to meet its objective. And they both start with the letter I. The first is innovation. So I think in the international statistics community, we tend to think of innovations in terms of adopting new technologies and tools to produce and use more relevant data for decision making. And this session will showcase recent initiatives in Colombia and Senegal that demonstrate this aspect of innovation. But Data for Now also supports innovations in collaborations. And I think Francesca touched upon that in her opening remarks as well. how groups come together to create and use data in new ways for the SDGs. Sometimes these innovations and collaborative structures aren't as visible as new platforms or tools, but they are just as essential if we are to fill key data gaps necessary for improving development outcomes. In supporting better country-level data systems, Data for Now recognizes that fostering trust in new collaborations takes time, as often the participants have not worked together in the past. But we find that once these trusts have been developed, these collaborations bear fruit. They contribute to local ownership of the task at hand, and they contribute to the long-run sustainability of the enterprise. Perhaps it's because country collaborations are designed to crowd in local implementation support to improve the prospect of the sustainable new processes is why it's so successful. In the same spirit of collaboration, we can find in the way in which the Data for Now 4 core international organizing partners work together. And again, let's remind ourselves, it's the World Bank, the UN Stats Division, Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data, and ourselves at SDSN TReNDS. Over the past year, we've agreed to a set of guiding principles that we adhere to when we work together. And with country leadership as the main principle, and with the national statistical offices at the center, we have committed to being outcome-oriented, working together in support of participating countries. And it's our conviction to these principles that bind us and provide the momentum behind the Data for Now. Along with innovation, a second word that describes the Data for Now initiative is inclusivity. That's my second word that starts with the letter I. Claire Melamed, who you'll hear from in a few minutes as sort of moderating our panel, describes the Data for Now initiative as a community. As collaboratives are at the heart of everything we do, we leverage innovations developed in intergovernmental organizations, bilateral agencies, academia, civil society, and the private sector to improve data for development. And all of these contributions have adopted the same principles. In addition, the list of partner countries is expanding. And I myself am looking forward to hearing more from the panelists about their perspectives on Data for Now. So as you listen to the speakers and the panelists that follow, and now that you sort of understand the enthusiasm that we have because this is a very innovative and inclusive project, I hope you get the sense of how this joint enterprise will work. And we would encourage you to think about joining this initiative as well. So thanks very much. And back to you, Francesca.
Thank you so much, Grant. And it's now my great pleasure to introduce the first speakers who will talk about work done under the SDG Goal 16. They are from Colombia and Armenia. Ms. Juliette Solano, who's the technical director of the regulation division in DANE, the Statistical Office of Colombia, and Mr. Bahan Martirosyan from UNDP's SDG Innovation Lab in Armenia. And there we talk about using social media data to complement information on SDG 16 in Colombia. Over to you. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Thanks a lot for the invitation to this event. We are going to, together with Bahan, we are going to share our experience in the calculation of the SDG 16 using social networks. I would like to ask if I can have permissions to share the screen of you are going to present.
It should be live now.
Okay, I hope you are seeing right now our presentation. I want to start talking about experimental statistics. That has been a project DANE has been designed and implementing in a way to incorporate innovations in the sources we are being used to produce statistical data, but also in the statistical methodologies, but also in the provision of statistical information for themes that are not previously measured with traditional sources. This approach of experimental statistics and the innovation it pretends requires a quality assurance scheme. For that, we have taken into account the United Nations Statistical Quality Framework, the second version of the handbook for the quality management at statistical production that incorporates also the importance of the quality management in terms of the SDG indicators. We also have taken into account the standards of the statistical production and specific standards to work with these new sources as the CRISDM, but we also consider the GANSO, the GSBPM, and other kind of standards that support this initiative. And based on the experience and the frameworks and the standards, we are building guidelines and directives in order to provide orientation for the national statistical system in the incorporation of these new alternative sources. In terms of the approach, we were using the CRISDM model. The model has 5 phases in which we start with the business understanding, then we move to the data understanding, data preparation, execute the modeling component, execute evaluation, and based on that, we define if we can start a deployment phase. In all this moment, we need to ensure a quality management in each one of the phases and the result we were obtaining. Continue, Bahan.
Yes, so in the interest of time, I will keep things very brief so that we can maybe get more into depth on our JAID. So we take a very holistic approach to data quality assessment, and we take the approach from the scope of the entire pipeline. So we begin by assessing the quality of data of our data collection procedure, focusing on stability of data gathering and also the quality of the data gathered relative to the target population that we're attempting to study. In the quality of data collection, we're interested in the parallel scraping of large numbers of profiles from social media platforms such as Facebook. And we have several technical disciplines to assess the stability of the data gathering procedure. And we also rely on several demographic analysis modules to analyze the demographic breakdown of the user data that we collect and assess its similarity with the population distribution of Colombia in general. Having gathered the data, we are now concerned with the quality of the data modeling, and we use unsupervised analysis, supervised modeling, and also contextual information analysis in order to ensure high quality models. And in order to ensure relative minimal resources as far as physical and the human labor is concerned, we rely on zero-shot classification and different types of computer vision and natural language processing algorithms, which we will delve more into as we go forward in the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, in continuing with the CRISDM model in the business understanding phase, our target was to obtain complementary measurements of the SDG system associated with the perception of discrimination through Facebook. Let's remember that the SDGs we were working on are the 10.3.1 and 60B1, proportion of the population reporting having felt personally discriminated against or harassed in the last 12 months, and SDG 16.7.2, proportion of the population that believes that decision-making is inclusive and responsive by gender, age, disability, and population group. The specific objectives were to have information to establish a baseline to measure perception of discrimination, because we are not provided a complete and disaggregate information for these phenomena, but also to produce complementary or contrasting information for the political culture survey, that is our traditional measure for the topic of discrimination, and taking into account the international humanitarian law. Our hypothesis is that Discussion on social networks such as Facebook or Twitter or so on can reflect social discourse in online work. Therefore, by tracking and measuring relevant variables of online activity, it is feasible to obtain granular proxy indicators for actual social trends and their underlying factors. We face some challenges from the beginning in this understanding of the problem and the objective we have. There are 4 challenges I want to mention. The first one was the few experiences we have at the National Statistics offices in the use of social networks to measure discrimination. The second one was the lack of technical capability, or we have previous experiences with simple models for test mining, but this approach required expert knowledge. In this
hospital beds, that one we maintained at.
Sorry, in this process, the support of the Data for Now initiative was very critical. The next challenge was associated with the data collection. We also have previous experience with Twitter, but not with Facebook. So we need to deal with problems of downloading these profiles and images for the demographic analysis. In terms of the quality assurance, we also have initiated some quality audits for the SDGs, but in this case, we need to ensure the adequate performance of the model that we explore and answer or resolve the problem of representativeness to ensure that the results we are going to have are sound and can be associated with the actual situation of Colombia. In the data preparation phase, we execute the characterization of the information downloaded from Facebook. This allows us to see how in the recent years has been an accelerated increase in the number of Facebook comments. So this shows us that this source is relevant for the topic we want to explore. As Bahan was mentioning, we explore in the modeling component natural language processing in 3 steps. The first step was the unsupervised analysis, in which we use 4 models: the zero-shot classification, LDA, sentiment analysis, and hate speech recognition. And based on the learning of the unsupervised analysis, we execute the supervised analysis in discrimination. And in the third step, we execute the contextual information based on a prediction model using Google News. Continue, Bahan.
Yes, thank you, Juliet. This slide shows some of the performance of language classification as carried out by the zero-shot classification models for Spanish language, fine-tuned for the Spanish language. So as we can see, we have several, in the columns, we have several types of discrimination, including racial discrimination, economic, political, immigration, so on and so forth. And we have under the text column the comment that is being analyzed. And under the columns for each of the types of discrimination are the degrees of likelihood, or sort of like a proxy indicator for probability that the comment pertains to one of these types of discrimination. So the example here, for those who speak in Spanish, it pertains perfectly to the topic of political discrimination. And this is reflected by the fact that the model has assessed a 0.999 or almost 100% likelihood that this is in fact a political discrimination comment. And this is done for hundreds and thousands of comments. I think right now we have over 700,000 comments that are being analyzed using this methodology. Thank you. Here. And this shows of the time series depicted on May 29th, for example. There was the maximum for the number of political discrimination comments. And this is actually related with the peak of the deaths and infection rates for COVID-19, which caused a certain degree of disenchantment on the part of the civilians and citizens of Colombia. And then we have a downturn on June 2nd, which was related with mobility restrictions in Bogota and Medellin, which are some of two of the largest cities in Colombia. So we can see kind of how Facebook acts as a proxy indicator for what is going for the general kind of consensus in society. Thank you. And yeah, this is just another look at the same slide.
Thank you, Baham. Continuing with the modeling components, we need to resolve the demographic analysis to ensure the representativeness of this data with the structure on gender of the general population. For this, we train a model to estimate gender based on a person's name, and we train this model using the population-based register. The model has a good performance of 88.5% of precision, and this allows us to have the two structures of the distribution of the population by gender from the Colombia based on the population register and compare it with the gender distribution in Colombia for the Facebook users. So with this comparison analysis, we can ensure that we have a sample structure that is that agrees or respects the Colombia gender distribution.
So speaking a little bit about gender and age classification based on profile pictures, we've implemented a pipeline for image classification, which is also based on the OpenAI CLIP model. It has gender classification, which has a very high accuracy rate, and age classification, which is also relatively high compared to the state of the art in the field right now. And using some data cleaning procedures and this language classification, we're able to extract gender and age from images, and we're forced to do this in fact because most users do not include age or gender explicitly as part of their profile descriptions. Thank you.
With this, we close the unsupervised analysis and we move with the supervised analysis, taking into account the previous knowledge we gained. In this part of the process, we select a random sampling of 150 comments. And on this sample, we execute a first iteration of classification with 9 laborers that make the job. And then we execute a second iteration on a sample that was expanded with 600 comments and for discrimination and 1,000 comments for representativeness.
Juliette, I'm sorry to interrupt you. If you could wrap up in less than a minute.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you so much.
Sorry. Okay, just this is a technical part. We calculate the kappa and Cohen coefficient, and then continue behind with the final considerations of this part.
Yes. So. We're still actively researching some of the ways of overcoming data quality issues. For example, with lack of trying to understand how representative the data is with regards to the general population of Colombia, and this is the most difficult part. So the most difficult part is in fact trying to understand the demographic distributions and their relative similarities. The remaining portion of the task is actually related with increasing the accuracy of the language classification models, increasing the stability of the data gathering pipeline, and also increasing the representativeness of the data by capturing a larger proportion of the at least population that is active in the social media landscape. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a final remarks, because I think it's important to share this for our experience. We need to, I want to highlight the importance of having cloud services that support all the technological architecture of these projects. I also want to highlight the importance of hub cooperation for data for now in order to ensure we have capacities and trainings, specific trainings to resolve the problems we face along the project. I also want to highlight the importance of working with other actors of the National Statistical System as the Presidential Council for Human Rights that allow us to ensure a sound methodology for the classification of the comments. So I think this has been an amazing opportunity to learn and to have improved our capacities to explore and use these alternative sources. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Juliet and Bahan. It's incredibly interesting. I wish we had more time. Sorry to having to rush you, but it's great what you shared already, very interesting. So I'd like now to turn to our speakers from Senegal. Before I do so, though, let me remind you, you can put questions both on the chat, but preferably in the Q&A part of the platform, the Zoom platform, so that we can then later address your questions. So now over to Senegal. They will be talking about engaging with National Statistical System to build a COVID-19 hub in the country. So we have with us today Madonna Wissi Sall, who's from UNSC, the Statistical Office of Senegal. She's the National Statistical Office focal point for the Data for Now project, a statistician and in the National Statistical Office, and works in programming, harmonization, statistical coordination, and international cooperation. And we also have Sheikh Faye from the Initiative Prospective Agricole et Rurale, IPAR, from Senegal also. Over to you.
Thank you. I am happy to present the Data for Now project in Senegal. The National Statistical Office of Senegal, UNSD, is the owner of the project at the country level. To explain briefly, in Senegal, there is a law that defines the institutional component of the National Statistical System. According to this law, the National Agency for Statistics and Demography is the main statistical body of the NSS. The other public structures of the NSS are also identified by this law. In its implementation, the Data for Now project has adopted a participatory approach. First, to identify priorities, a workshop was organized in Kigali. During this workshop, 5 themes on which to focus were identified based on an alignment between the SDGs and the National Strategic Plan. After several consultations, UNSD and SSS stakeholders have chosen to focus on indicators not yet produced by the NSS and for which information is available. During the implementation of the project, the key stakeholders are involved. Indeed, the UNSD ensures the availability to scheduled training workshops. Can you skip to the other slide? Yeah, I am on this slide. Yeah, thank you. During the implementation of the project, the key stakeholders are involved. Indeed, the NSD ensures the availability to scheduled training workshops. All NSS stakeholders who are potentially involved in the production of data for the calculation of priority indicators are invited, and their opinion are considering after the training session. Next. The project has also facilitated the involvement of and the direct collaboration with several partners along the entire process. 3 of the key partners involved in the capacity building on SSS stakeholders in Senegal are FAO, UN Habitat, and United Nations Statistics Division. I am, no. I'm sorry, but yeah, I am on this slide. No, not this one. Yeah, this one. Thank you. So I was saying that the 3 of our key partners involved in the capacity building of NSS stakeholders in Senegal are FAO, UN Habitat, and United Nations Statistics Division. So in collaboration with FAO, D4N helped to build the capacity of ANSD and SSS stakeholders to produce this indicator themselves. To do so, an FIS training was organized on September 8 and 9. A training on the indicator 231 and 232 was conducted on November 23rd and 24, and another training for the same indicator is scheduled for May 24 to 27. In collaboration with UN Habitat, a training workshop is scheduled in the first week of May. And in collaboration with the United Nations Statistics Division, D4N project plan capacity building on the small area estimation. Next. So this is the good one. Add IT and architecture. To support data for now innovation projects in the prioritized thematic areas, an IT consultant was hired to work in close collaboration with ANSD technical team to implement the technological infrastructure environment needed. The first step was to make an analysis of the current situation. This analysis showed that ANSD uses various and diverse data sources from different surveys and from different databases sent by NSS stakeholders. These data sources are in different formats: SPSS, Stata, Excel, and even Word. The work of processing this data requires several steps that often involve the intervention of the IT team, which will carry out manual work for each query. Ultimately, thank you. Ultimately, this leaves less time for statistical analysis work. After workshop and discussion with the ANSD teams, a customized platform was identified to have a unified method of storing and processing massive data from various sources. The main objective is to improve the production of the SDGs and create a single shared source of truth. We have reached the deployment stage of this platform. Close work between UNSD and the ANSD IT team was allowed to define the workflow. 2 consultants have been hired. The data that will be used to set up this platform has been identified. It will be the COVID-19 data produced by the NSS. Meetings between the consultants and the ANSD team were held to discuss on the work scheduled and the technical prerequisites to be set up. Next. I will not insist on this part. Next. Thank you. No, you can return back. Thank you. So I will go directly to the last priority theme, which is the COVID-19. So to set up a data platform on COVID-19 in Senegal, the D4N project hired a consultant to conduct the data cataloging and profiling of the various COVID-19 database produced by the NSS stakeholders. The consultant's findings identified the 10 most relevant databases produced by the NSS stakeholders. ANSD is in the process of retrieving them to set up an integrated platform for COVID-19. So I will let la parole à Cher. Cher, c'est à ton tour.
Thank you, Madam. Indeed, the study has identified 30 databases and the 10 most relevant. And just remember that the purpose of this study was therefore identify COVID-19 related databases and determine their suitability for integration into a national data platform. Also review sources for data deemed relevant and profile identified data sources. And in order to achieve these objectives, we use a methodology taking in count the context of pandemic. The context, the COVID-19 context require a virtual communication approach due to the limitation of physical contact. Thus, we conducted data collection mainly by telephone, and the approach consisted of identify NSS structure that produce pandemic-related data, mapping data set, and selecting the top 10 priority data set based on an indicator of relevance. To do this, we use the list of 95 member structure provided by NSD. These allow us to identify 30 data sets and profile them with the indicator of relevance. And for the characteristics of profile, we can say that the magnitude of COVID-19 has led to significant data collection and monitoring initiatives. Thus, the need to produce data are generally indispensable for a set of actors. Thus, more than half of the data are produced regularly, or 56.7%. However, the accessibility of this data is problematic. Only 50% are accessible to any user. They are mainly from administrative sources and sample survey. In terms of representativeness and disaggregation, 70% of dataset can be disaggregated by region, and 90% of identified data can be disaggregated by sex. All data profiling information was used to construct the relevant index. The relevant index and data relevance index for the COVID-19 data platform feed ranked the 30 data sets in order of relevance. In this table that you see on the screen, you see the 10 most relevant data bases. These are data to flow up on the pandemic. There are data to assess the impact of the pandemic on commodity prices, and data also to measure.
Could you please go to the full presentation mode? It's difficult to see the table.
You can't see the table.
It's in the edit mode. If you could switch it to the presentation mode.
Let me 1 second.
Try pressing F5.
That's okay?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Okay, so the data that you are see in the screen are related to data we can use to measure the impact of the pandemic on the maritime traffic, on employment. We can use also data to measure impact on the culture, on also sanitation, but we can use also data for to know what is the impact of the pandemic in our in threat. But in conclusion, we can say that study provides benchmarking to for measuring and tracking the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, but also the impact in Senegal to help inform decision. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It is now my pleasure to introduce Claire Melamed, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data, who will moderate the panel with great panelists. Claire, over to you.
Thank you so much, Francesca. Thank you all. What really interesting and stimulating presentations. I really enjoyed that, and great to hear how this Data for Now program is having an impact at the country level in that some of those very specific ways that we're seeing filling data gaps that hopefully will help us all to make faster progress on some of the critical sustainable development goals. It's a great pleasure now to introduce to you a panel, and our aim here in this session is really to sort of zoom out from these really interesting and inspiring country examples and think about some of the just to think more broadly about the Data for Now initiative and how that can support progress in other countries across different regions. And I very much hope that all of you who are watching online, and very warm welcome to you all, will be able to understand from this conversation and think about the ways in which perhaps you might be able to get involved in the Data for Now community. As Grant said at the beginning, we think of this as a community. We want this to be a network through which we can disseminate innovation, learn from each other, develop new ways of doing things, and in doing so help to make progress on key policy priorities. So really happy to introduce my panelists, who I can't see. So I don't know, colleagues, if you'd like to turn your cameras on. Charles, very warm welcome to you. Lovely to see you all here. I'm going to very quickly introduce everybody just by name and title. So perhaps you can just give us a little wave when I say your name, and then we'll jump straight into the conversation. So very happy to welcome on our panel Mr. Biratu Yigezu, who is the Director General of the Ethiopia Statistics Service. Welcome to you. To welcome Mr. Omar Saidu, who is the Coordinator for Data for SDGs in the Ghana Statistical Service. Lovely to see you there, Omar. To welcome Ms. Yani Otiklen, who is the Head of Division for the International Development Cooperation and Statistics Norway. Also an old friend of Data for Now, Dr. Charles Kimpolo from the African Institute for Mathematical Scientists, and very happy to also greet Ms. Rachel Bevan, who is the Director for Statistics at the UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, known to some of you as UNSC. So very warm welcome to you all. It's really lovely to be with you today. So let me start perhaps with a question for you, Biratu. I know that Ethiopia is a country which is recently joined Data for Now and is developing the program and the activities. What do you see as the main benefit of the Data for Now program for statistics in Ethiopia? What motivated you to want to be part of this community? You could just turn your microphone on, that would be great.
Sorry, thank you, Claire. Data for Now is a very good and relevant initiative for developing countries like Ethiopia. Ethiopian Statistics Service, previously called the Ethiopian Statistics Agency, now the name is Ethiopian Statistics Service, appreciates the aim of the initiatives which is to increase the use of robust methods and tools that improve the timeliness, coverage, and the quality of the SDG data. We also inspired by today's presentation, and we are happy to be part of this initiative. When we developed our national strategy for development of statistics, we have identified the improving the existing methodology is very important to be able to produce required data for evaluating the SDG and the country's national development plan goals. This includes implementing also a small area estimation technique to get more disaggregated data, and also to improve the quality of administrative data to be more usable. We are also interested to use innovative sources and methods to fill the data gap. Our office also has a good experience in using geospatial information, and we will continue to use this resource to get more disaggregated data and also to improve the quality of existing data. We are also planning to work with the civil society organization to design standard procedures to improve the quality of citizen-generated data. Ethiopian Statistics Office believes that this partnership will help us to develop and build our capacity to test and implement the appropriate methodology and to use innovative sources and methods to fill the data gap. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Biratu. That was really helpful. And I think, points, I think, for others who are considering their involvement in Data for Now to note there is particularly, Biratu, what you mentioned there about innovations in some of the foundational data sources, administrative data and so on, as well as geospatial and other more sort of technologically focused data. That innovation is not just for fancy things and social media and so on. Innovation is also for the bedrock, the heart of national statistical systems. I think that was fantastic to hear that point made so early in the discussion. And also, of course, the engagement of civil society and other stakeholders, and how important it is to all of us as we're building these systems to make sure that we have the engagement of others, both as consumers and users of data. So thank you, really, really helpful. I think our colleague from Ghana has temporarily lost his connection. So hoping that we are able to reconnect with Omar very shortly. But let me perhaps ask you, Janne, also as Statistics Norway has long been a supporter of Data for Now, but I know that some of your involvement has been more recent. So similarly, I'd love to hear from you, what motivated Statistics Norway to want to be part of this Data for Now community, and what are you hoping that you will gain from your interaction, as well as, of course, being able to contribute to the rest of the community?
So thank you, Claire. As you're saying, we of course now still in the starting phase. So maybe just say a little bit about that first. We are just starting now last year our dialogue with UNSC. We had our first meeting with Colombia in the fall. So far we're mainly learning about what others are doing and getting inspired from the Colombian example. But now we are looking, of course, to find potential partners and projects where we can contribute also and work together with collaborations. But for us now, the first and maybe most important step is to look at actual demand and find out what potential partners in the Data for Now initiative requests. So one important advantage we find from this initiative is that it focuses on being demand driven, and that the prioritization should involve not only the NSOs, but also the relevant stakeholders, as mentioned before. Secondly, we also have to ensure that we have the right experts available, and this can sometimes be challenging, so we have to plan a little bit ahead. So we are already at this stage thinking a little bit about how or where we can be involved. So just to mention that quickly as well, We're looking at two main parts, where the first one is related to the use of administrative data. As just mentioned by you also, there is innovative methods of using administrative data, and this is important to keep in mind. So this is an area where we have a long experience in statistics Norway, and we do get a lot of requests for support. And we see that many NSOs are very keen to take better advantage of the administrative data in their countries. So typical questions would be often about the quality of administrative data, also how to link the data or how to get access to data. So these are areas where we could typically be involved in future. The other part would focus on methodologies and innovating use of data sources. So here we're exploring different possibilities, which could include web scraping, geospatial data, machine learning as some examples. So I think from our side, I can also just mention that because we do have, of course, being at the very early stage of this, we are also looking at how we can contribute. But what I can say is also we have a big team we can draw on. So we have, just counting the last 3 years, we have more than 100 different experts that have been involved in our experts or in our projects from the different departments. So we can draw on a very broad range of expertise and topics. So this also makes this project very interesting, because we see here we're looking more at going more towards innovation and working in a different way than maybe in more traditional projects. So we see that many are keen to contribute. But as mentioned, we are still at the early stage. So we are very keen to see how we can now work together with more partners. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you. And I'm so glad you mentioned at the beginning the critical importance of being demand driven, and the way that the Data for Now program is very much built on the priorities of those participating countries, the ones that you've heard from. And again, for those of you who are listening, you know, that is what we really want to know for those particularly government partners or statistics partners who are wondering about perhaps how to get involved. You know, this is very much built from the priorities of our partners. And Jana, as you said, then to sort of try to match up where we can put together the right technical support, and also build the right communities where there are kind of common challenges. How can we enable partners, government partners and other stakeholders to learn from each other and share some of their experiences? And that is very much the sort of bedrock of how the Data for Now program operates. So Omar, let me now turn to you as someone who has been involved with Data for Now from the very beginning, and has seen in Ghana that, you know, has really spearheaded the Data for Now program in Ghana, and, you know, helped us, I think, all to understand how that the kind of partnerships that we're able to offer can be helpful in helping you and your colleagues at the Ghana Statistical Service to really carry out your priorities and make sure of the contribution you're making to the policy making process within Ghana. So I'd love to hear a little bit about, you know, what motivated you at the very beginning stages to be interested in this program, and then perhaps a little bit more on how it's particularly enabled you to engage with policymakers and to really lead to the end of the process around actually using data to inform decision-making in the country. Over to you, Omar.
Thank you very much. Yes, so as you rightly indicated, Ghana has been part of this from the onset, and it's more around the identification that policymakers, and especially a comment from our Vice President, who says that politicians make decisions at 3 a.m. And at that time, in 3 a.m., when everybody's sleeping, they need data then to make those decisions. And the absence of the data, they will go ahead with the decisions anyway. And so we saw Data for Now to be a great opportunity to engage in and make sure we're able to meet this particular demand. So what we have done is to try to leverage this opportunity to innovate around using non-traditional data sources that can churn in more quick data information to support policies. Quick examples. For instance, when we got COVID, the first cases of COVID in Ghana, and the President of Ghana instituted the lockdown. Within 3 days, we came up with mobility analysis to support government to understand how people were responding to the lockdown in the major cities that a lockdown had been established. And this could not have been possible if we had not used innovative data systems, because within 3 days of the lockdown, these were already published. Another thing we have been able to do is to leverage this. And if you understand the context of Ghana, illegal mining is one of the things that is driving the loss of forest cover. And so using this platform, we were able to identify over the last couple of years some of the forest reserves, protected areas that have been deforested. And we had documented this for a period of 5 years. And when we made a presentation to the Parliament of Ghana, we got the Speaker of the Parliament of Ghana, especially in the year 2020, when the destruction in one particular forest reserve was 10%, which was more than the destruction over the last 5 years. So the leader of the government business in Parliament said, Omar, we need you to present this to cabinet because we need to understand the destruction we are causing to ourselves. So this gives us indication that when you have data at the time policymakers need it, they're able to act promptly to resolve issues. Another example I would want to use is for the first time in the history of Ghana's Statistical Service, we had opportunity of being part of a parliamentary committee going to perform their oversight responsibilities in selected areas. And so quickly we mobilized data together within a week for those areas on SDGs goal 1, 3, and 4. And data covering a period using administrative data, covering a period of 6 years. And when they visited those areas for the oversight, they could see that there was no proper alignment of the evidence available through what we compile and the program being implemented by those. So that immediately triggered some action by the members of parliament. And so these have been some of the benefits that we have immediately seen being part of this program. And this, we believe, is something that we want to continue to be part of.
Thank you so much, Omar, and thanks for all your work and support during the duration of Data for Now. And I think that point about parliaments is so critical. You know, as you say, your vice president is really a trailblazer in the use of data in the executive for decision making, for policy making, and so on. But obviously your work engaging with parliament is so critical in the use of data for accountability. And, you know, just as we think about data for policy making, we also mustn't forget the critical role of data in enabling others to hold those policymakers to account. And really kind of delighted that that has also entered the conversation. So thank you for that. Let me turn now to Charles Kimpolo, who has led, who has really been so key across, you know, much of the region in working with some of the governments that you have seen here and many others in helping to deliver some of the capacity building that, again, is a really critical element of Data for Now. As we have discussed with partner governments what is needed, we've heard already some of the issues around access to data, around data infrastructure from our colleagues in Senegal and so on, but all of this relies on having people who are able to use the data, to use the infrastructure, to understand the methodologies and apply them in a way that produces reliable information upon which, as we've just heard, both policy making and accountability depend. So Charles, let me just hear from you a little bit about, you know, some of the key contributions that AIMS has made, and really what you see as the benefits of being involved for AIMS in the Data for Now program across the region and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. It's great to be part of this conversation. So as you rightly put it, from inception workshop that happened in Kigali, AIMS has always been part of the conversation with other partners to has to be as inclusive as possible to bring everyone together for us to contribute in achieving great initiative, because we believe that addressing sustainable development goals should be common purpose. I don't see any in the world that doesn't believe that key to do. So as an academic and research institution, EMS has leveraged both the expertise, the know-how, which is what we, but also the resources of having a Pan-African network of Center of Excellence across Africa to do a couple of things. One is what you said, sit on the table, help assess the skills and capacity gaps, especially of government institutions that are involved in the initiative. Cameroon made it very clear that it was a principle for government to take the leadership. So for us, it's important to assess the capacity, the skills gap, and see what we can do. Once you do that, the next things to do is what we are good at, which is developing a new partnership to design, deploy, what I call need-driven. This is on the supply side. So if the needs are defined, the priority are defined, how do you supply the skills? How do you develop curriculum and training that respond to that need? For us to develop what I call capacity development training as a response for the identified skills gap. And so, yes, there's a couple of examples maybe you wanted me to share, but for me, the partnership that a global partnership for sustainable development data brought forward, because the role that you are playing to really bring all stakeholders together is quite key in a manner of trying to leverage those kind of relationships and do things a little bit differently. That's the type of innovation. So I have an example of the Data Science Fellowship program that both GPS, DD, and EMS developed. The objective was for us to really strengthen the skills and capacity of African institutions, data science tools and techniques to enhance data and statistical processes and outcome. So if you have more time, I'm gonna maybe share the example of concrete outcome from this kind of partnership where we're working with government institutions in countries to really help them move from priority definition, from need assessment to really work together and deliver concrete project with real output. So for EMS, I think we need to continue doing that, be on the table to ensure that government really have the capacity, be it from the skill side or the infrastructure, that will allow them to take that leadership position as Cameroon put it rightly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charles. It's been a real pleasure to work with you. And I think as you, as you rightly said, one of the hallmarks of Data for Now is not just innovation in data sources, but also innovation in how we work together. And I think the fellowship is a really good example of that. And, very excited that after, as you say, some really successful initial works, we're hoping to be able to scale up the fellowship program very soon. So watch this space. And, I think it's a great example of how we can kind of use Data for Now really as a learning platform and learn together through this community about how to improve our practice. So we've heard a lot. We've heard a lot from different speakers about some of the sort of specific country level initiatives and some of the great progress that's been going on there. I want to turn now to Rachel in her capacity as the head of statistics at SCAP, and just think about the regional perspective. You in different ways have been involved with Data for Now from the very beginning and seen it grow. And I wonder from your now current perspective at SCAP, how you see Data for Now helping with the kind of regional perspective and helping to build those communities for innovation and for progress at the regional level. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you very much. And as you say, I have been involved right from the beginning. I think that what we have seen is we've got lots of examples, as we've heard already today, about what's going on at the country level. And we've got lots of examples of kind of in one country where one indicator's been worked on and a whole new kind of partnership's been developed there. But I think that in order for us to really look at the future, we need to look at how we can really build on that and how we can scale that up. Because we obviously can't kind of devote the resources that have been kind of put into working at one country on one indicator. We need to kind of actually look now, I think, at how we can actually build a bit more to actually build at scale. So we need to kind of look at not just what we're doing on one indicator, but how we can kind of develop tools that can then be used, say, on another kind of similar indicator, or used in a kind of another context, and then use those tools, adapt them maybe, but kind of build on what's being done already, so that what we're not having to do is to keep kind of rebuilding when we're kind of coming to look at every single separate indicator in every country. So I think in terms of the role for ESCAP and other regional organizations, I think there's a real role for us there in terms of how we can help countries with that. Really, in terms of there's definitely more to be done in the area of training. We know that there's still huge needs around kind of areas like geospatial data, lots of different big data techniques where we actually need to really do some very focused training, I would say, on the things like small area estimation as well. I mean, I think there are other good examples, things like in the ESCAP region, we started, or my predecessor started 2 years ago, a series of stats cafes, which we do every week or every couple of weeks, which is just a kind of hour or so virtual kind of workshops, and bring people together, but kind of look at one particular topic, and countries are really able to actually share what's going on. But it gives them an opportunity to actually do it quite informally and actually talk to each other about different examples. And I think that has really started to kind of spur people on and beginning to actually ask questions from each other about, oh, I heard about this, can you tell me a bit more? So we've seen lots of examples there about countries sharing, Indonesia sharing the work they were doing on tourism data, using kind of web scraping. There's lots of others like that, but I think things like those informal fora can really help. I mean, going forward, I think we probably need to continue to build the partnerships, but also I think look a little bit more carefully at some of the guidance that we've got, and also work a bit more, I think, about joining up the country level, what's going on there with the kind of global guidance, global training, and helping countries a bit more so that they can really scale up this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. And I think that's really helpful to sort of show us all how at every level learning is really sort of fully part of the DNA of this initiative. It runs right through from the learning that is happening within countries, between different stakeholders and so on, right through to our learning about how to run an effective program. And then, of course, this learning, as you say, at the regional level and across communities formed around different challenges, different sectors, that can really make sure that the innovation that we're generating in these countries is being diffused right across the network and through the program. So thank you so much. Now we are inevitably almost out of time on this panel, but I'm very aware that we absolutely haven't got anywhere close to tapping the expertise of all of the panel members. So if I may, I'm going to do that classic chair's annoying last question tactic, and invite you all for a sort of 1 or 2 word answer. Data for Now is all about finding the places where innovation can make the most difference, and innovation not for its own sake, but to support systems, to support policy, and to really ensure that statistical systems are delivering what their users need. And the users, of course, are politicians, but also the citizens of a country. So I would love to hear from each of you in as few words as possible. What are the specific areas in which you think innovation is most needed? And we could be thinking about a sector, we could be thinking about a type of data, about a function or area of activity. What's your wish list for where you would most love to be able to drive forward innovation in your particular context? So let me go back to the same order in which everybody first spoke. And Biratu, I'm afraid it falls to you to kick off, to just quickly come in with your 1 or 2 words on what's your dream for where you most want innovation to happen.
Thank you. From today's presentation, I think we learned a lot, and from our side, we are really happy to involve in areas like the involvement of geospatial information, or merging the geospatial information with the statistical data, and also on small area estimation, since we have a problem in these areas to provide data at a disaggregated level. Thank you.
Thank you so much, really clear there. And I hope my colleagues from Data for Now are writing all this down, because as we need to understand these priorities to design the next phase of the program. So thank you. Jana, let me turn to you next.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. Yeah, so the first thing that actually comes to my mind then is, of course, being able to link data, linking administrative data sources, because we see that we need to build registers, all kind of business registers or population registers. Being able to link all the available data would be really, really useful. And I also want to just mention that I think this initiative, by also engaging the users and the producers, that this is also, maybe it's not innovation, but somehow it's very difficult to do. And I think this is maybe a tool using this initiative to get people on board. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
That's a really good point. No, we have a very broad definition of innovation, and I think that definitely counts. So thank you, Omar.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I've just posted a link in the chat that gave an example of what we have been able to do, publishing using Earth observation and administrative data. Leveraging this, because administrative data is where we can focus to get local level data, disaggregated data that feed directly into policy. And when we did this for only five districts in November 2021, now as we speak, I'm in the next room training people who are now going to do it for 101 districts out of the 261 districts in Ghana. And so this is a classical example of the demand of data for now and providing data now to those who need it most to solve local problems. And for us, this is something that we want to continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think a really good reminder that, you know, we have to take this right through to the local level if this is really going to have the impact that we want. So thank you so much to you, Charles.
And thank you, Claire. I was just thinking about how can we sustain the positive change that we're talking about. And for me, the human side is very important to change the way we really build capacity and upskills the champion in this institution. I'm looking at change of mindset in the way we build capacity so that we put this champion, this official statistician at the center of sustaining those kind of changes that we're making. So we don't want to send them to university to do another degree in data science. I think we just need to innovate the way of training them. I think that's key because we need to sustain this kind of change that we're making. So that's my opinion.
Thank you. And I think that point exactly about champions political leadership. This is not just a technical challenge, this is a political challenge. And many of you on the panel exemplify huge success in really marrying the sort of technical challenges with the political advocacy and leadership that are necessary to actually create that change that we want. So very well taken there. Thank you. And Rachel.
Thank you so much. And yeah, the problem with going last is that lots of people have said what I was going to say already. But I think the one thing I would really say is I think we really need an innovation, a change of mindset. I think we need to be much more open and actually just open to new sources, open new tools, to new methods. And I think with that spirit of openness, the tools and the methods and the data is there, but actually we just need to change our mindset and be willing to try new things and to do that together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And I think that's a fantastic place to end this panel with a focus on the human dimensions and to really remember that the institutions that we are talking about are made up of people and relationships between people and the processes that we want to contribute to and that we want to use to affect change likewise are all about people, relationships between people and the way that they work together. Thank you so much to all of you for the panel discussion, which has been fantastic and really stimulating, and also just, you know, personal thanks to all of you for your huge support for the Data for Now initiative. It's been such a pleasure to work with you over the last few years, and I think as we continue to build this community, just really excited for what we can, even more excited now after this discussion, for what we can do together on the next phase. So huge thanks, and let me now hand over to my colleague Vibeke from the UN Statistics Division for any final points and the closing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Claire. And yeah, it's really exciting to hear everything that is being said and all the engagement. I know we are running over time, but there's been so much engagement and conversations in the chat, also from the presentations from the two countries. So I want to very quickly give the two countries a chance to come back. I see that Juliet and Vahan have been very active in the Q&A, responding to questions, but maybe if you very quickly want to summarize some of the feedback that you gave. And maybe also, I think that relates to the way forward, what you still see as a next steps in your work. So Juliet, if you can maybe summarize in a minute or two on this, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We were talking in the chat and trying to answer the questions. There are very specific questions, but in general terms, there are questions regarding the representativeness in the use of these new sources. That is still a challenge. We think that we can overcome that challenge, increasing the size of the samples, continue exploring new models. But also it's still a challenge, and probably the working together could be very productive to overcome this challenge. Other questions are related with the work with other actors at the National Statistical System and how to ensure that the production of a statistical information based on these new sources is used and is considered like a rigorous and supports the decision making. This is still a process under construction. We, in the case of the discrimination project, we work together with the presidency, and that collaboration allows us to establish categories to make the classification of the comments of Facebook, respecting the conceptual framework of discrimination. So I think this is a process that is continuous, and we need to continue get involved with new actors and try to understand with those perspectives the problems we want to solve with these new sources. I hope we can continue chatting and answer the questions and working together in relation with these topics. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Juliet. And I think also for everyone who has input or ideas, don't hesitate to reach out either to us or to Colombia on this. I think we're really happy to engage with partners and see how it can be further improved. There's also one question that I'd like to ask quickly to colleagues in Senegal, and that is whether Senegal has a data protection legislation that had to be considered when integrating the various COVID-19 databases and how that impacted the ownership of the data. So if you, Madon, could quickly respond to that, kind of how that works in Senegal, that would be great.
Yeah, really quickly, I can say that Senegal have a data protection legislation, but for the data COVID-19, we don't use the micro data. We use the aggregated data because of this legislation. We cannot use micro data, especially because these data are not produced by NSD, but are produced by the stakeholder of the NSS, and it is really sensitive data. So we ask them to work with aggregated data. So I think this is my answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madon, and we also look forward to the continued work in Senegal. So I will then move on to the closing. I think so much has been said that I don't need to say too much. Just re-emphasizing some of the things that we have heard that has come up in these discussions and in the presentations. The Data for Now initiative is country-led. You see that on how the countries have taken very different approaches, the ones that we are already working with. It is policy and user need oriented. We heard how the different countries are engaging with policymakers and really get responses to that. And that's something we really want to continue highlighting and working on. It focuses a lot on innovation, but at the same time, as was said, it's with statistical offices at the lead, and we need to follow the UN principles of official statistics, follow data quality standards, and so on. So we need to balance that. Partnerships, I think, has been showcased throughout the session today, and we are happy to bring more partners on board, engage as widely as possible under this initiative. Two things that have been mentioned also, I think particularly by Rachel, is on the kind of how do we scale up. Currently, we have been, as core partners, we've been able to secure more funding, so we will now be able to work with more countries. We also have partners that can work with countries under this initiative, but we will continue to secure more funds and partnerships so that we can widen the engagement under the initiative. The other thing is also that we are starting to share solutions. We will be sharing training materials from the work in the countries. UNSC currently has published trainings from Senegal and Colombia. I'll put that in the chat in a second. The goal is really for as many as possible to benefit from this, so that it's possible to engage and use materials, even if it's not necessarily a direct training that can be received. So we will do what we can to kind of make this a solution that is helpful to as many as possible. And we're looking forward to all of your engagement on this. And the only thing I would like to end with now is to thank everyone that was engaged, all participants, all speakers, moderators. It's been a really great event, and thank you so much, and looking forward to the continuation. Bye-bye. Thank you.